I never imagined that a single bowl of hot soup could change the course of my life. And yet that moment kept replaying in my mind again. And again, the heat, the shock, the sting. And the sudden flash of betrayal from a woman who was supposed to be my family, the mother-in-law for my son, had always been a difficult presence. But I never thought she would go this far. I still remember the way the steam curled upward from the pot as she stirred it in her kitchen, the aroma filling the air, making the whole house feel warm, the kind of warmth that tricks you into thinking everything is safe, everything is normal. But nothing with her had ever been normal. She had always held some hidden fire behind her smile, a fire that burned slow and cold, the type that waited for the right moment to strike, and that day it struck hard. It began quietly that morning when I arrived at her house with my son who loved his grandmother so much he tugged at my hand with excitement as he stepped inside, calling out happily, the innocence in his voice cutting through the tension that lived inside those walls, a tension only I felt but never spoke of. I did not want to ruin his happiness. I wanted him to have a family that loved him, or at least pretended to, but the woman who stood in the kitchen was not thinking about family. She was thinking about something else, something bitter and sharp simmering beneath her skin like the soup she was stirring. I could sense her anger before I even understood it, the way her eyes narrowed, the way she avoided looking at me, the way her jaw tightened every time my son hugged me, as if every gesture of love between us offended her somehow. She believed, for reasons only she understood, that I had stolen something from her, maybe her son, maybe her pride, maybe the place she imagined she deserved in his life, and in her confusion and resentment she aimed her anger at me. I tried to make small talk, I tried to smile, to keep my voice light for the sake of my child, but the atmosphere grew heavier with each passing minute. My son ran to play in the living room while I offered to help her cook, thinking that maybe kindness could soften her mood. But her voice came out sharp like a blade slicing through the air. She insisted she did not need help. She insisted I sit down. She insisted in a tone that was not a request, but a warning. And I felt the uneasiness spread through me like a slow cold wave. I sat at the small dining table watching her back as she stirred the pot, her shoulders tense, her movements too fast, too aggressive, the boiling liquid splashing against the metal sides. I could feel something building inside her, some storm that had nothing to do with soup. Then she turned, and the moment I saw her face I knew something was terribly wrong. Her eyes were blazing, but empty at the same time, like she was seeing someone else, someone who had hurt her, someone she needed to punish. And in that instant she lifted the pot. And I did not even have enough time to react, not enough time to understand, not enough time to defend myself. The next few seconds happened too fast, too brutally for my mind to catch up with reality. The hot soup left the pot and came flying toward me, the burning liquid hitting my face with a force I never expected from something so ordinary. The pain exploded across my skin like fire. My scream caught in my throat, and the world spun around me. I remember the feeling of heat, the way it crawled across my cheeks, the way it made my eyes burn, the way it sent a shock so deep through my nerves that every part of my body froze for a moment. I heard my son scream in the distance, his voice cracking with fear. I heard the pot clatter onto the floor. I heard her breath, fast, heavy, almost triumphant. And for a moment I could not move, I could not think, I could only feel the burn spreading like it wanted to swallow me whole. She did not rush to help me. She did not show panic or guilt. She simply stood there with her chest rising and falling, and with a look that I could never forget, a look of satisfaction, like she had finally released whatever dark poison she had been carrying inside her. And as I held my face, tears spilling from my eyes without control, I knew something had broken, something important, something that could never be fixed again. My son ran to me crying, holding my arm, pulling me away from the table, his small voice trembling as he asked if I was hurt. But I could not even answer. The pain was too raw, too fresh, too vicious. I stumbled toward the sink, trying to cool my burning skin with water. But even the water stung like needles. And my son held onto my clothes, sobbing, while the woman who caused all of this simply watched, her expression slowly shifting to annoyance, as if I had ruined her day. I wanted to yell, I wanted to scream, I wanted to ask her why. But all I could think about was my son, his fear, his tears, his shaking hands. I had to stay strong for him. Even when my face felt like it was melting, even when my vision blurred, even when my heart was breaking into pieces, I turned to her and asked why she had done it, not in anger but in disbelief. And she answered with words I wish I had never heard, words soaked in venom, about how she had had enough, about how I never respected her, about how I was turning her son against her. But that was not true. None of it was true. She had built all of it in her own mind and used it to justify her rage. I realized then that this was not a moment of madness. This was something she had been waiting for, something she wanted, something she planned, whether consciously Or not, she wanted to hurt me and she succeeded, but what she did not know was that her actions would soon bring consequences she never expected. As I held my face trembling, I knew I had to get out of that house. I told my son to gather his things, and even though he was terrified, he listened immediately. He clung to my leg the whole time, refusing to let go. I carried him in my arms, even though every movement made my skin burn. And as I headed toward the door, her voice followed me, mocking cold, telling me to stop being dramatic, telling me it was just Soup, telling me that I should learn my place. I did not answer her. I did not look back. I simply walked out the door, and in that moment the world felt quiet, heavy, unfamiliar. Outside the air was cooler, but it did nothing to ease the pain. I held my son tightly, whispering that everything would be okay, even though I was not sure I believed it myself. My hands were shaking, my vision blurry, my heart pounding. But somewhere inside that storm, a small part of me was growing stronger, a part that had been silent for too long, a part that was ready to take a stand. Because one call from me, just one, would change everything. I held my son close as we reached the car, the pain in my face burning like a brand across my skin. Yet the shock had given way to a fierce resolve that made my legs move faster despite the ache and tears streaming down my cheeks. I opened the door and helped my son into his seat, then sat beside him, gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands, trying to steady my breath as the reality of what had just happened settled over me like a heavy fog. My phone sat on the passenger seat, the screen glowing softly as if waiting for me to do something. I knew exactly who I needed to call. But even as I reached for it, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: fear, anger, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. How could someone who was supposed to care for us hurt me so deeply? Yet amidst all the turmoil, one thing was clear: I needed help. And I needed it fast. I dialed the number with trembling fingers, my heart pounding loudly in my chest as the phone rang once, twice, three times, until a familiar voice answered, calm and steady. It was the voice I had needed more than anything in that moment. And with that voice came a surge of hope that maybe this nightmare was not the end, but the beginning of something new. I explained everything as best as I could, through the tears and stammered words, trying to make sense of the chaos, my voice cracking with emotion. Yet the person on the other end listened patiently, offering words of comfort and a promise that things would be okay soon. I heard that help was on the way, someone who could protect me and my son, someone who would make sure we were safe, and heard the promise of support was a lifeline in the storm. And as I waited for help to arrive, I looked down at my son, his wide eyes searching mine for answers. And I knew I had to be strong for him, even though inside I felt broken. The ambulance came quickly and the paramedics treated my burns with gentle care, their voices calm and reassuring as they wrapped my face in cooling bandages. I tried to focus on their kindness rather than the pain. And as we headed to the hospital, I held my son tightly, whispering promises of safety and love, even though I was unsure of what the future held. At the hospital, the doctors worked swiftly, their expertise helping to ease some of the pain. Though the burns were serious, they assured me I would heal with time and care. As they treated me, I thought about the call I had made, the decision to reach out for help that had saved us both from further harm. And I felt a flicker of strength grow inside me. Despite everything, the warmth of that support gave me hope that the dark chapter with my mother-in-law was not the end, but a new beginning. A few days later, I found myself sitting in a small office across from a woman who listened intently as I recounted the events I had lived through. Her eyes were kind and her words gentle but firm. She explained that what had happened to me was abuse, and that I did not have to endure it alone. She gave me resources and told me about legal protections and support groups, and suddenly the path forward seemed less daunting. With help, I started to rebuild my life piece by piece. I found a small apartment where my son and I could be safe, and slowly the pain on my face began to fade, but the scars in my heart remained, a reminder of the cruelty I had faced. Yet even in the darkest moments, I found strength, I found resilience, I found the courage to stand up not only for myself, but for my son, who deserved a world free from fear. The days that followed were not easy, but with each step I grew stronger. I found new friends who became family, and a community that lifted me when I felt like falling. The hot soup in my face was a brutal beginning, but it was not the end. It was the spark that ignited a fire within me, a fire that no amount of pain or hatred could extinguish. And as I looked into my son's eyes, I knew that we would overcome whatever came next, because sometimes one call, one brave step is all it takes to change everything. The days after the attack were filled with a strange mixture of pain and determination. Every moment was a reminder of what had happened, but also a chance to prove that I was stronger than the darkness that had tried to consume me. I focused on healing physically and emotionally. Each morning I woke up with a face wrapped in bandages and a heart wrapped in uncertainty. But with each passing day the pain lessened, and my resolve grew stronger. My son became my light in those difficult times. His laughter and innocent questions reminded me of why I had to keep going. I enrolled him in a nearby school, hoping to give him a sense of normalcy and a chance to grow surrounded by kindness, while I sought legal advice to understand my options against my mother-in-law who had crossed all boundaries. I was surprised by how supportive the community was. Neighbors brought food, offered help, and checked in on us. Those gestures of kindness mended some of the broken pieces inside me, but I still faced the challenge of maintaining a relationship with my son's father. He had always been caught between his mother and me, and now the situation was even more complicated. I knew I needed to protect my son from any further harm, and at the same time I wanted to believe that his father could stand by us, even if it meant facing his own family's anger. I reached out to him, carefully explaining the situation, hoping he would understand and support us. To my relief, he did not hesitate to visit the hospital and later our apartment. Though his presence did not erase the pain, he was willing to be there for us, and that gave me some hope. Together we began to navigate the difficult road ahead. Legal proceedings were stressful and draining, but I was determined to see justice served and to make sure no one else suffered. As we did with the help of a lawyer, we filed a formal complaint against my mother-in-law and requested a restraining order that would keep her away from us. The court process was long and filled with moments of doubt, but each hearing reminded me that I was not alone, that the law recognized our suffering, and that our voices mattered. The support from the women's shelter I was connected to gave me strength. Their stories of survival inspired me to keep moving forward. Slowly my face healed, the scars faded, but the emotional wounds required more time. Therapy sessions helped me confront the trauma and learn to trust again. Every small victory felt like a triumph, and I started to envision a future where my son and I could live without fear. The bond between us deepened as we shared our dreams and fears and celebrated every ordinary day free from pain and hate. Though my mother-in-law's actions had tried to break me, they instead awakened a resilience I never knew I possessed. And with each passing day I reclaimed my life with courage, hope, and an unwavering love for my son. The day would come when I could tell our story not as victims, but as survivors, as proof that even the darkest moments can lead to a new dawn. Time passed and life slowly began to regain a semblance of normalcy. Though the memory of that horrific day never fully faded, I found strength in the small joys: the laughter of my son, the warmth of the sun on my face, and the kindness of strangers who had become friends. With each step I took away from that dark chapter, one felt my confidence returning and my spirit healing. I found a part-time job at a local bookstore where the quiet shelves and soft lighting offered a peaceful refuge from the chaos that had once engulfed my life. My co-workers were supportive and understanding, and I cherished the moments when I could lose myself in stories other than my own. During this time my son flourished too. He made new friends at school, and his teachers praised his resilience and bright spirit despite everything he had been through. I watched him grow with pride, knowing that together we had survived the worst and were building something better. Meanwhile, the legal process against my mother-in-law moved forward. She attended the hearings, but her attitude had shifted from anger to defiance. Her attempts to intimidate me and my son only strengthened my resolve, and the court finally granted the restraining order protecting us from her presence. Though the wounds she inflicted on my heart would take longer to heal, I found comfort in knowing that she could no longer harm us physically or emotionally. As the months passed, I began to explore new hobbies. Painting and journaling became outlets for my emotions, helping me process my experiences and express my feelings in ways words sometimes could not. I discovered a supportive community of survivors who met regularly to share their stories and uplift each other. Their courage and friendship became a beacon of hope, reminding me that I was not alone in my journey. With every meeting my confidence grew, and the fear that once held me captive slowly loosened its grip. I also reconnected with my son's father on a deeper level. We worked hard to build a relationship based on trust and understanding. He became an active part of our lives, sharing in the joys and challenges of parenthood. Though we had our differences, we both wanted the best for our son, and that common ground helped us move forward stronger than before. One day, as I looked in the mirror, the reflection I saw was no longer defined by pain or fear. It was a face marked by strength and resilience, a face that had endured fire and emerged whole, a face ready to face whatever came next. And I knew that no matter what life threw at us, my son and I would face it together with love and courage, because sometimes the worst moments lead to the greatest transformations. The days grew longer and my determination deeper as I pushed myself to move beyond the pain that had once threatened to consume me, my son, and I settled into our new routine. Each morning was a battle and a blessing all at once, but every small step forward felt like a victory. I focused on building a safe haven for us, a place where laughter could grow and fear would not find a home. At the bookstore, I lost myself in the quiet comfort of books. The stories transported me far away from my troubles, even if only for a little while. The gentle rhythm of shelving novels and helping customers gave me a sense of purpose and normalcy I hadn't felt in months. Outside of work, I dedicated myself to therapy sessions where I peeled back the layers of trauma. With the help of a compassionate counselor, the process was painful and exhausting, but it was also healing. Slowly, I began to reclaim my sense of self. Piece by piece, the support group for survivors became another lifeline. The women there had faced horrors of their own, yet they carried themselves with grace and strength. Their stories inspired me to believe that recovery was possible, and that I was not alone in this fight. Together we shared tears, laughter, and encouragement, creating a sisterhood bound by resilience. As the legal battle continued, my mother-in-law's attempts to intimidate me only fueled my resolve. I refused to be silenced or scared. Her anger transformed into bitterness, but the court recognized the gravity of her actions, granting the restraining order that kept her physically away from us. That ruling brought a measure of peace, though the emotional wounds lingered. I worked hard to create a loving and stable environment for my son. Watching him thrive at school was one of the greatest rewards I could have hoped for. His teachers praised his courage and kindness, and he blossomed into a bright and joyful child. The bond between us deepened. With every shared moment, we talked about dreams and fears, and built a world of hope amidst the shadows of our past. Reconnecting with my son's father was a journey in itself. He was sincere in his desire to be present and supportive, though rebuilding trust took time. We made a pact to put our son's well-being above all else. Our renewed partnership brought balance and strength to our lives and reminded me that family can be chosen and rebuilt in new forms. Outside of work and healing, I discovered the joy of creativity. Painting allowed me to express emotions that words could not capture. With each brushstroke, I found peace and empowerment. Journaling too became a sanctuary, a place where I could reflect on my progress and set intentions for the future. The simple acts of creating became powerful symbols of my reclaiming control over my life. As months turned into a year, I looked back at the long road we had traveled, from the fiery pain of that fateful day to the quiet strength that now defined us. I saw how much we had grown, how fear had been replaced by courage, how despair had given way to hope. The scars on my face had faded, but the story of survival they told was etched in my heart, a reminder of the battles fought and won, the love that carried me through, and the unbreakable spirit that would guide me forward. With my son by my side, I knew we could face anything, because sometimes the most painful endings are also the beginnings of the most beautiful journeys. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the small apartment where my son and I were beginning to rebuild our lives. Though the wounds from that fateful day still throbbed beneath the surface, the promise of a new beginning filled the air with a fragile hope that I clung to with every fiber of my being. Each day brought new challenges, but also moments of unexpected joy. My son's laughter echoing through the rooms was a healing balm to my weary soul. I watched him grow stronger and more confident with every passing week, and I vowed to protect that light no matter the cost. I returned to my job at the bookstore, the simple routine grounding me when the shadows of the past threatened to overwhelm my thoughts. The scent of old books and the quiet murmur of pages turning became a sanctuary where I could momentarily escape the turmoil within. Outside of work, I threw myself into therapy, determined to face the trauma head-on. The sessions were difficult, often stirring up memories I wished I could forget. But with the gentle guidance of my counselor, I learned to untangle the knots of fear and anger woven deep inside me. I started to see myself not as a victim, but as a survivor, someone worthy of love and respect. The support group became a vital lifeline. Their stories mirrored mine, and their strength fueled my own. In their company, I found solidarity and sisterhood, a place where tears were met with understanding and laughter with genuine joy. My mother-in-law's attempts to unsettle me continued, but with the restraining order in place, her reach was limited. Though her bitterness seeped through family gatherings and whispered conversations, I refused to let her poison my world. The legal battle was far from over, but each court appearance was a testament to my courage and resolve, knowing I was fighting not just for myself, but for my son gave me purpose. The days were not without setbacks, but I learned to navigate the roller coaster of emotions. The fear would sometimes claw its way back, but I met it with resilience. The anger flared, but I channeled it into strength, and the sadness was there, but it became a river I could learn to swim in rather than drown. The presence of my son's father grew steadier as he committed to being a part of our lives. His support was not perfect, but it was real, and it reminded me that family could be complicated but still loving. We worked hard to build a foundation of trust and respect for the sake of our son, and in the quiet moments I found solace in my creativity. Painting allowed me to pour my emotions onto the canvas, the colors blending and clashing much like the turmoil within, giving me a sense of release and control. Journaling became a daily ritual, a way to document the progress, the setbacks, and the hopes. Each word written was a step towards healing and self-discovery. As the months turned into a year, I stood in front of the mirror and saw a woman transformed, no longer defined by the scars on my face, but by the strength and courage that radiated from within. The road had been long and arduous, but it had also been marked by moments of grace and love. With my son by my side, I knew that whatever storms lay ahead, we would face them together, unbroken and unafraid, for sometimes the deepest pain can ignite the fiercest light, and that light would guide us toward a future filled with hope and happiness.